I'm going to call to order the Grafton Select Board meeting for June 8th, 2021. It is 7 p.m.
Recording in progress.
I'm Colleen Roy, and I'm going to chair the meeting tonight. I will start with a roll call for all members and intended guests. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Peter Carlson, Doreen DeFazio.
Doreen is here.
Matt Often, Ray Mead.
Ray's here.
Colleen Roy here. Staff members and other anticipated speakers, Town Administrator Evan Brassard.
Here.
Chris McGoldrick.
Here.
John Allen.
Here.
Joseph Sutkawi.
Here.
Gopinath Malathi.
Yep.
Eric Strand.
Here.
Bob DeToma.
Here.
Justin Souza.
Here.
Good evening, everyone. This open meeting of the Grafton Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency due to the current outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded, so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. The meeting does not have a public hearing and will not feature any public comment. For this meeting, we are convening via Zoom, and it's posted on the town website identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded so that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and to take care not to share screen your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. Please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way to help generate accurate meeting minutes. And please allow the chair, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you before speaking. All right, I would like to start with an announcement that we did not enter into executive session this evening as the agenda indicates. That was postponed and will appear again on a later agenda. I would also like to acknowledge Jim Pignataro's retirement. There is a celebration planned on Friday, June 11th at the Post Office Pub from 2 to 6 p.m. Cost is $25. Appetizers will be served. If you'd like to attend, please RSVP to Beth Lambert at jimpigretirement@gmail.com no later than today. And a reminder that the Select Board will be returning to in-person meetings starting June 15th unless the state acts upon pending legislation. So the first item on the agenda is the local rapid recovery plan, and I will hand the meeting over to Mr. McGoldrick to introduce it.
Madam Chairman, can I just interrupt just for 1 second? And I'd like to offer the condolences to Don Davidson, his family. Don passed away yesterday, and Don was a member for many years of numerous committees and boards, and especially the Finance Committee for I think over 30 years. And I just want to offer the condolences to his family from the board and also from the town of Grafton.
Thank you. That's awesome. All right, Mr. McGoldrick.
Thank you, members of the Select Board, for having us here tonight. So as you heard in roll call, we have Eric Strand, Joseph Sutkawi, and Gopi Malathi from CARP Strategies with us tonight. They'll do the main portion of the presentation, but just as a quick background, I did circulate a memo earlier today. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but just giving a brief background of the program and where we are. The goal of the local rapid recovery plan is to develop near-term high-impact action items that the town can engage in to facilitate and rapid recovery of local businesses, as well as support their long-term resiliency and success in terms of their being affected by COVID-19. Part of the efforts that have been done to date is a site visit that was conducted on April 12th, where the scope of the project has been refined to the New England Village area, which is in North Grafton, and a image of that site area was included in that memo for you. Since the April 2nd site visit, CARP Strategies and staff have participated and conducted an online survey, as well as a number of interviews of individual businesses, owners, and collected critical information for the formation of a local rapid recovery plan for moving forward. The goal of tonight's workshop will be to get additional information and input from the Board of Selectmen, as well as any stakeholders, local leaders, and public that are attending and watching. Although we request feedback tonight, any other additional feedback, if we don't have time, please send it into the planning department and we'll pass it along and include it. So, but with that, I'll turn it over to CARP Strategies. And
thanks, Chris. I'd like to share my screen if that's possible. I've got a brief presentation to provide a little more introduction to the program and to share a little bit about what we've been hearing so far.
You should be good to
There we
share
go.
now.
Great, can you all see it? Perfect. So I'm Joseph Sakawi. I'm a senior consultant with CARP Strategies and the project manager working with Grafton on this program. Our team is also working with Mendon and Upton as well. So there's a lot of great kind of synergy between these projects. The three towns are all looking at very similar things, which is going to be helpful, and we can kind of draw lessons from each town. Tonight, we'll go over in just a couple of minutes. I'm going to fly through these slides. A quick overview of the program, an overview of kind of where we are in the project plan, reshare that map just so you guys can see the geographic boundaries, talk through the results of a business survey that we did, talk through some of the things that we've been hearing from stakeholders we've talked to, and then share a couple preliminary project ideas that we've heard before we jump into a longer conversation where I really want to hear from the folks on this board and any public participants in the meeting on where your priorities are for this program. So about the program, this is a program led by the Commonwealth's Department of Housing and Community Development. They've got two kind of fundamental goals here, and that's going to be to support their own kind of data collection and understanding what's happening in communities across the state so that they can customize their funding programs, their support programs to best serve communities who are responding to COVID and moving into this kind of post-COVID phase. And then what we feel is from our perspective, the more important part, help each community develop detailed project plans to enhance economic growth and support business development. We've been working very closely with Chris and John so far. We also, through this project, will have the opportunity to seek counsel from subject matter experts and everything from zoning and wayfinding to kind of more technical engineering services. We're conducting stakeholder engagement to really get to know the community. That's part of this meeting is part of that effort. And this will help us create a set of very actionable short-term project plans for the community. So where we are in the process, we are just closing out what the state is calling the diagnostic phase, where we're essentially learning about the community from folks in the community. We're then going to take a list of every idea that we have heard that seems even remotely plausible and put that in front of Chris and a few others to say, help us whittle this down to about 15 project ideas that you want us to pursue in more depth. We'll then come back with some thoughts on feasibility, approach, early kind of project plans, kind of a preliminary approach, and then narrow that down to create your final playbook of about 10 project plans that are super detailed, ready for implementation, ready for you guys to go out and secure funding for the community. That'll happen kind of across the next 1 to 3 months. as Chris noted in his communications earlier, and as I know is in your packet, this is the map of the area that we're working with, essentially Truth Organic Spa down to the mill and like the Grafton Grill area. We go into Perry Hill a little bit, and this is the area that we're really focusing on. It doesn't mean that some of the project ideas that come out of this and some of the plans won't be things that are valuable citywide, but for the purposes of this project, we're really focusing here, and this is where I want to keep our discussion tonight. Moving to the business survey. So we had about 8 responses out of the businesses that operate specifically in that North Grafton area. 75% reported that they were impacted in some way by COVID that looked like reduced operating hours, declines in revenue, employee layoffs, or just additional costs to implement safety enhancements. 25% saw revenue decrease by 25% or more from 2019 to 2020. And unsurprisingly, the vast majority had fewer customers on site. That survey started asking about kind of their what they see as valuable in the community, where they see room for improvement. 87% said that some marketing strategies for the district itself would be valuable. About half thought that on top of that, cultural events or other activities in the district would be valuable. Businesses were overall very satisfied with the condition of public spaces, public streets, public sidewalks. About 3/4 said that they would be interested in some sort of business improvement district management entity, some sort of kind of connecting fabric for the businesses in this area. 87% wanted to see new businesses recruited into the area. And then 100% were satisfied with kind of access and safety for customers. So we've done a number of interviews so far. We've presented to the development team at the city. We've talked to business owners one-on-one. We've talked to others one-on-one. And I'm just going to share a couple of the highlights in a few slides of what we've been hearing. This is not, of course, comprehensive of everything we've heard, but we know from the interviews that, and we also did a site visit with Chris and John. We know this is a strong industrial hub. The mill is, of course, a major player, not only in this area, but in Grafton as a whole. That does create kind of a conflicting vision for what does the vision for North Grafton look like? Does it stay industrial? Does it add in more kind of non-industrial commercial activity? You have restaurant presence, you have the dance studio, you have things that draw people in. That does create a bit of a conflict with the industrial zone. We also know you have a great park on Bridge Street. You've got a couple restaurants there that are doing great. We've heard that there is a lack of foot traffic in this area. Related to that, kind of a lack of public seating and benches. And then, as I said, that kind of there is conflict between industrial versus kind of commercial shopping and dining. And a lot of that's around the trucks that are going in and out of the mill facilities, between the facilities in that area. When we asked about kind of COVID-19 impacts, we over and over again kept hearing how pleased people were with municipal support for outdoor dining. That was something that's come up in a number of conversations. People are really proud of the way that Grafton handled outdoor dining, the speed with which you got restaurants through that process. So I want to make sure that you guys are recognized for that. We've heard that parking requirements can impair outdoor dining. There's kind of another spatial conflict that exists there. We know a number of businesses in the area benefited from state programs, from things like the Payment Protection Program. And then we've also heard that there's just been great support for takeout for the local restaurants. In thinking about some of the barriers that we've heard to development, across the board, construction costs right now are really, really high. You've probably seen lumber in the news. That's one piece of it, but this is an issue that's not specific to Grafton, but has come up in a couple of conversations. Related to that, access to capital for physical maintenance and improvements is a barrier for businesses. We've heard that there is kind of a low density of commercial attractions. We have the restaurants, one or two shops, but not a lot of kind of anchor to draw large numbers of people in. We've heard about challenges with zoning that don't allow mixed use development, commercial development. A lot of the area is still zoned industrial, even if that's not the use that the current owner is looking for. There are some perceived barriers for construction and permitting with the city and what that process looks like. And then there's, as I've said a couple of times now, this perception of this as a commuter and industrial zone. That's not the same thing as a commercial district, and that's come up a number of times. So as we move towards some sample project ideas, these are kind of the type and scale of project that this program can help you plan. What the town gets out of this state program is a detailed project plan that outlines, here are the steps, here are the regulatory barriers, here's the process to go through, here are potential funding sources for this. We don't execute the project. This is about giving the town some additional capacity to plan. These are a few of the ideas that we've heard. This is not even remotely a comprehensive list. We've heard a number of ideas, but this to just give a little bit of context as we get ready to jump into the discussion. We wanted to share a few ideas. So some of the things we've been hearing: create a business association for local businesses in North Grafton, establish a marketing plan and branding for the North Grafton area, upgrade the Perry Hill open space, attract food trucks to the different park spaces that are in the neighborhood, rezone some of the properties from industrial to commercial in ways that allow for mixed use, update parking requirements kind of in alignment with potential new zoning, improve bike infrastructure, and then develop some wayfinding to kind of connect the Perry Hill area with businesses along Route 122. This is just a few of the many things that we've been hearing, and that we will work with Chris and John and others to help identify what are the things out of these that are worth moving forward. So that's the extent of my presentation. I have talked a lot. I would like you guys to talk a lot at this point. So I've got a couple questions that I'd like to hear from you on. Thinking specifically about economic development, what are some of the biggest challenges that this group sees in North Grafton?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ray.
So some of the biggest challenges in North Grafton is, one, it is a tremendous amount of traffic. And the roads are very small. We can't make the roads any bigger. That's a big problem. The train is, although is in the north end, it brings issues now that they put up the barriers to stop the traffic when the train's coming by. That makes a problem. But the mixed use idea, and I've talked to a couple of businesses down there, the mixed use idea is a good idea. And I know that we did away with it quite a while ago, and when we changed zoning. But the area needs to have a facelift. We have great businesses down there, and those businesses have been down there forever. the mill and the pub and, Grafton Grill, the dance studio, we had the bike shop there, but that's being turned into office space. But it's a great area. But it's, once you get off of North Main Street, it turns into apartments and houses and everything like that. And, there are some great parks up there, Perry Hill Park and Whitney Park. And I'm going to throw this out there. Whitney Park was being proposed to be redone. But, I'm going to say this, some people just can't get over the super park, but I'm off of that now. The Engine Company 2, the fire station up there, they were the ones that did the Veroni Bridge, which is beautiful. And they proposed to do Whitney Park also. But again, there are areas up there that we can create parking, that we can create walking paths, that we can create bike paths, add new sidewalks, and rejuvenate that entire area. And if you guys, and along with Chris, if you guys have funding sources to do all of that work, I'd be 100% involved in it. And I'm sure that I could get Engine Company 2 Association back involved in this. But it's a great area, but it's limited on scope because of its size.
So speaking of funding sources, I wanted to ask about that. So is this project limited to $60,000, or that just helps get us started on the project?
So the $60,000 is essentially paying for our efforts to build out the project plans. So depending on which projects go forward, there are some that we can kind of get fairly far into, particularly around, if there are things pursued around business promotions and marketing, things that are a little more desktop based as opposed to capital based. We can get further into those, but the 60,000 is from the state to develop the 10 plans themselves. Part of the plans will be us identifying potential funding sources from state, federal sources, other sources, and building that into the plan to say, if this goes forward in full, here's how we would recommend that it gets paid for.
Doreen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I thank you. Great presentation. I had, when I was reviewing Chris's slides earlier, the first thing I thought of in this neighborhood too is the impact of the changes in the railroad over the past few years. And I just was curious on any involvement or discussions with the railroad, or how often it was brought up, if any, with any stakeholders in the community, or particularly with the businesses, and if there was any impact. Not that we can necessarily do anything about it, but I would just like to hear, in case we come up with a creative way to help resolve that traffic issue.
So this is not something that came up in any of the interviews. Chris gave us a little bit of an overview on our, when we did a walking tour back in April. Certainly one of the key steps for us as we're building out project plans is speaking with more members of the community, engaging and working with some people that are on more of the technical side. And it's something that we could certainly explore, but it hasn't actually come up in any interviews that we've done so far.
Okay, that's really good news. So Ray had brought up a facelift, and I agree. And some of those businesses have been around for decades, and they're very popular and well utilized and liked. But to me, just help with the aesthetics of some things to make people want to want to go, or just make the neighborhood look like it's had a little bit of a facelift. And you also mentioned in one of your slides, which I thought was a good idea, when this was presented as the New England Village, I had never heard of that before. And it would be, I think, really important to sort of champion that this neighborhood, and perhaps do some kind of I know I see things like flags or stuff I know have been done in the past through the historic district, something like that, to really delineate this special neighborhood in town from others. I think that would also add a little add special character, or just sort of accentuate what the special character is in this particular part of town. And the park, I know, is what I really like about it is there's there are these old industrial buildings which you had described as a conflict, along with a brand new park across the street, a new restaurant, and to me, looking at an area like that, it's sort of what makes Grafton, that we're combining the new and the old. So in my opinion, I don't necessarily see that as a conflict unless it comes into issue with future economic development. And you had stated, Joseph, about some potential commercial zoning versus industrial zoning. So if it's an issue as far as getting new businesses in town, I would be for changing it. But as far as the character of that part of Grafton being a conflict, I actually see it as a good thing.
And I should clarify, thanks for that, Doreen. I should clarify that when I say conflict, I'm thinking of that primarily through the lens of, some of the, restaurants, shops, those tend to bring out pedestrians, and this is an area with heavy truck traffic. So it's a safety conflict, not necessarily a character conflict.
Understood. Thanks for clarifying that. Thank you.
And one of the things I'll mention that we've heard both in discussions here, and then it's something that your neighbors in Upton and Mendon are very likely to pursue, is the potential to do, is one of the project plans, facade improvement grants or signage improvement grants. And that's something we could certainly explore here as well.
Matt?
Thanks. Yeah, I think to go back to the question, what are the biggest challenges in North Grafton? This is true for much of Grafton, but I think it's just as relevant in North Grafton, where we have businesses and where we have areas of open space and places to congregate. They're really spread out. So we don't have any contiguous areas where it's conducive to having a village type of feel at this point. So we don't have that sidewalk infrastructure. We don't have those bike lanes. We don't have the businesses that are next to each other. It's just not, it's all distinct. So the traffic, like anything that would not be car traffic, you'd have to, it's just not kind of together. So it just doesn't, to me, it's not conducive to that kind of village character, I guess, because you get, a business and then a space and another business and a space. And so it's not consistent, I guess, in terms of the feel of it. So, my mind immediately goes to infrastructure and, can we identify areas which can be sort of grouped together? Like you've got sort of the, Roney Park and the grill together now. If we could combine that with, a nearby park, like, Perry Street, to improve that property, or, there's been some discussions about the space across from Station 2. Then you could start to build something which would become the center of something that could be kind of built out on, Right now, it's all just these very disparate, separate spaces that are fairly well disconnected from, unless you're in a car, unfortunately.
Madam Chair,
Right?
Matt, the original plan, or the plan for Whitney Park, which is across from the fire station, was to connect Roney Park and Whitney Park together through a sidewalk system. So that would have been, you know, the start of that project. But that was just more information than you know, you would ask that question. But that was the plan, was to try to connect that whole area together.
And
Ray,
I think,
sorry.
go ahead.
Ray, earlier you mentioned potentially bike paths and walking paths, and I'm not super familiar with that area. Is there a potential for bike paths and walking paths to help make that connected feel that Matt's talking about?
Well, there's very, Perry Street has sidewalks. That's it. You know, we had, and I'm saying engine company too, had spoken to we're working with the Recreation Commission and talking about making sidewalks from Perry Street to Whitney Park that would take you all the way down to the Roney Bridge. So that there's nothing up there right now. There are no sidewalks up there right now. And there's tons and tons of apartments. So if you're walking up there, you're walking in the street other than on Perry Hill. So there's areas to bike as you go up 2nd Street. You go up to the top of 2nd Street. I mean, they're not long biking paths, but they're great walking paths. So, I mean, there's a lot of work that could be done in that entire area. It's going to take a lot of money. But I think the idea of this thing is to try to spruce it up and do something with North Main Street to try to spruce it up. And I know a lot of towns, cities and towns are doing this now. They're redoing the sidewalks and putting in parking areas and things like that. And you know, up at Whitney Park, there's actually parking because the size of that piece of property is the grass. I wouldn't even call it grass, but the dirt area is smaller than the actual park. And we estimated that we could get 20 car parking lot up there. So I think it's all things like that. I think this is a great idea. It's going to take a lot of money. The bridge on North Main Street, if you ever drive by there and you look at the railing that's just kind of suspended in the air, that's a state situation. So we'd have to get the state involved in that to actually put in a nice rail and fix some other stuff over there. But I think this is a great idea to try to, you know, a stepping stone to get this area, you know, rejuvenated and get people in. I mean, there's a ton of people that live back there, but you know, it would just be great, I think.
Madam Chair.
Doreen?
Ray, you probably know this. So 140 is a state road.
Yes.
Do you think there is potential to get grant funding through the state for sidewalks or any sort of improvements on you know, going from Bridge Street maybe up to Perry Street or up to, you know, the end of the intersection?
Yeah, well, I talked to Dave Moradian about this last year because the bridge at North Main Street there really needs to be, not the bridge itself, but the area, all of that stuff needs to be redone. It's quite a project, and that would be a state project. Now the state only does work within their cut. So all of the sidewalks on North Main Street are within the state cut. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong. So we would have to work with them, and there probably are grants or appropriations that could be made in conjunction with, you know, with the town to get this work done.
And sorry, I only saw 4 people on the screen because I forgot that Chris is here too. So yes, I could have asked that question to anybody, but thank you, Ray.
So I saw Matt and Chris's hand go up at the same time.
Yeah, I
We'll
just,
be-
I'm thinking about the, what's happening on Main Street right now, right? I think that's a STIP funded project that's going on. I'm just thinking about the amount of, the process that we went through where Grafton's got to do a lot of the pre-engineering work. That has to be funded locally, which sort of prepares us to make some grant applications to the state because you've got to have a little bit of skin in the game. That whole process, I think, took a good decade. So, and I think in saying that, the point is that if we're serious about this, we want to get it in now so that in 10 years, we're talking about actually, shovels in the ground sort of thing. So part of my thinking though, too, is, is this the right project? Are there other areas of town which would be less expensive, potentially benefiting as many or more residents that would be more conducive to this type of investment? So, while I support the idea of this, I think we really should, I'd like to take a little bit of a step back and say, is this what we want to move forward with for this investment, or is there a better place for this? I don't know. I'm just, I came in a little bit late to the conversation, so I'm sorry if I've missed a little bit of it.
Chris?
So I wanted to speak to that a little bit, and thank you for bringing that up. So part of us refining the scope, just to go a little bit in more detail, in my original application, thinking I was clever, I picked pretty much all of the 7 or 8 villages that we have in Grafton, trying to look at all the commercial, include all the businesses that I could. So although we did refine down to this one location, I am anticipating that we will take this process and try to reapply it to those other villages in the near future. So I would encourage that we move forward with this, since we've already done some extensive data collection for this area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that these other areas in other villages in town will be left out. I really do want to get to them as well. And then just a quick anecdotally on the grant funding. One of the things that I'm hoping to bug you guys about probably in July, once I have time to get that up and running from the staff level, is the complete streets, which I've kind of mentioned before. To the select board and the planning board. And part of how that would work, even though North Main Street, I believe you're correct, is in the state road. Typically what you can do with those programs is put something like Perry Street and High Street on your list. And what that does is it kind of nudges the state, saying these other connecting roads are receiving that attention, and they get the development. And that kind of nudges them to then extend that project and do the state road as well while those are going on. So it's one of those ways to kind of, you can't, the state will do what they want for those roads, but it's a way of kind of nudging MassDOT into certain areas at a scheduled time. So
Is there a time frame for when this plan will be completed?
Sorry,
go ahead.
took me a moment to get to unmute. We will be at the end of this week submitting kind of the long list of projects, everything that we've heard to Chris and John over the month of June into early July. We'll work to refine that down to what are the final 10 that move forward. And across July and August, we'll be developing the actual plans, conducting kind of the background research, the additional technical interviews that go into those, so that towards the end of August, you'll have the final package.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions at all? Well, that was a lovely presentation. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing that with us tonight. You guys have anything else you want to add, or?
No, just thank you all so much for your feedback. This was an immensely helpful conversation for us. I've been watching, and on my other screen is Eric and Gopi have been frantically taking notes on everything that you've said. We've captured it all. You will likely hear from us again throughout this process, perhaps as a group, perhaps individually, as we start to dive in more detail on some of these project ideas. But just thank you so much for your time today. And as a last piece, Chris mentioned this before, feel free to reach out to him and John for the program. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or want to add anything. The three of us communicate very closely. So there's kind of no wrong door if you have additional ideas or things that you want to share. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Oop, there we go. So the next on the agenda is the Veterans Advisory Committee and Trustees of Soldiers and Sailors Memorial. We have a few guests in to discuss separating the duties of these committees and to hear what that would look like and how it works in other communities. So I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Souza.
Hi, thank you very much for having myself, and I know Bob's here for GGTV, but also as a member of the board of the trustees right now. It started off with the trustees of the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Committee was kind of the catch-all for veterans, everything in town. When I came on board in July of 2017, the Grafton trustees had somewhere around 4 or 5 members that met regularly once a month to discuss a slew of issues or activities, from Memorial Day and Veterans Day to putting flags out to getting a new memorial made, which is actually on the North Main Street Bridge that was referenced earlier. There's a Soldiers and Sailor. It's a maritime memorial for maritime service members, to include the Merchant Marines. So they have, over the last few years, kind of fallen. The membership of that board has fallen away, and to the point where now they haven't met for, I want to say, close to a year. And they were talking about meeting again. And I have been watching the Westboro Veterans Advisory Board, which is both the trustees and the advisory board are local options within state law, Chapter 115, and they serve, or actually, sorry, the advisory board is within 115. The trustees is in a different section, and I can quote that if you need it. But basically, the trustees' sole responsibility is for the memorials in town, and they're charged with caring for it, and they can only have 5 members, and one of them, there's a very strict guidelines as far as the membership on that board. The advisory board would be up to 15 members, anywhere from 5 to 15 members, and they don't have as strict rules for membership. So with the veterans that have expressed interest in participating in veterans activities, but are not able to meet, say, the strict requirements of the trustees of Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Committee, I thought I suggested to Evan that it might be a good idea to explore standing up an advisory board for the town of Grafton. And I provided a couple documents for the board, both laws quoting the 2 boards, and then the mission statement from the Westboro Veterans Advisory Board. So that's kind of the long of the short of the long of it. I mix my metaphors, so I don't really, that's it to start. So questions?
Evan?
I mean, just I'm going to reiterate something just quick to kind of sum it up. So at its core, if you recall, when we were having conversation about the Board of Trustees for memorials, we had kind of a membership that wasn't meeting regularly, and we needed to be able to expend some funds.
Yes.
We then looked into the matter further and figured out that that's supposed to be elected, and the chair always sits in the committee. So if you remember that part of the conversation. And what we've noticed is that that group really had scope creep, right? So you had people on there on a board that kind of meets very infrequently because they don't need to meet frequently to do, memorial work. But it seems like a lot of people would be interested in doing this advisory board that is a little more hands-on with kind of more frequent activities for the veterans, right? So parades, flags, like Justin said, all of those type of things. And we thought it might be great to stand up both of those. You could have cross membership, but just recognizing that the board of trustees is something that meets once a year, twice a year. The advisory board, which would help Justin carry out his mission in Grafton, to put on these type of events and to make sure that we have recognition and maybe do some kind of cool, innovative things for the veterans, is it needs to be a different group. And that's where the advisory board comes in. And so that was really kind of, I know I repeated you, Justin, quite a bit. But,
You said it much more eloquently than I did. Thank you, Evan.
so that's why we're here. So we're asking, or want to have a facilitated conversation with the board to say, we really need to be standing up an advisory board as well as seeking some membership for the memorials. And then letting Justin and Bob and everybody kind of run with that to do a little more activities for the veterans. Go ahead, Justin.
If I may, there is also, there should be zero cost to the town in standing up an advisory board. And the trustees already has a budget in place. So this should be a zero sum, well, we should come out stacked positively because we'll have a lot more veteran engagement in the community. But as far as money goes, it shouldn't cost anything to stand up the advisory board.
So essentially, we would need to see 2 charges brought before us to vote on.
Yeah, and I've been giving this some thought. So the charge for the memorial committee, that's formed by statute. So that charge is what the statute is, right? That's 41-105, if I'm not mistaken. And so that should just give us, everything. The 115 section with the advisory board, I mean, we have things from Westboro that Justin was kind enough to share with us, and we can steal that and make it our own pretty easily, I think.
I should add the trustees is already constituted within Grafton. That's already a board, so we don't have to worry about voting that on. The only thing that I guess we would have to put forth for a charge then would be the advisory board, right?
Correct. Yep. I concur.
Madam Chair,
Doreen?
just a question to either Evan or Justin or Bob. Justin, you mentioned that we could have on the charge 5 to 15 members, and that's a pretty big range. So I was just wondering if we could have the conversation of what are your thoughts as far as membership? I mean, we certainly wouldn't want to exclude anybody who wants to be on it, but at the same time, sometimes when you have too many people in a room, you can end up getting less done. So I always like board sizes to be 9 or under, but I'm not a veteran, so I'd like to hear the intention from you.
If I may answer first, that the advisory board that I've had experience with, the Westboro Veterans Advisory Board, has had anywhere from 5 to 10 members, and it seems to work very smoothly. They follow what's the name of the rules for Robert's rules? Thank you. There is a secretary that is appointed that moderates all their meetings, and the secretary allows, like just as this is moderated, the secretary moderates all the meetings. I feel that closer to 10, possibly 15 could be very useful because of in Westboro, for example, they have a lot of ideas for programs that they would like. What they do is they say, hey, we see a need maybe for care package outreach to be done for a unit that's deployed. We see a need for flags to be placed on Memorial Day. We see a need for, several things, say several programs that they suggest to my office. And then if any of them require funding, they have to go out and fundraise in the community, or if we have some funds available in the district or in Westboro specifically, I'm able to channel some of those towards like some of the activities they used. But having more than 5 members allows each person to take on a task for the board, and spreads out the workload, versus like when there were only 5 members on the board, the secretary of the board, who happens to be my part-time agent, John Gallinaw in Westboro, was getting slammed with, hey, this is a cool task, you should do it. This is a cool task, you should do it. This is a cool task, you should do it. And now that there are closer to 10 members, they're splitting that workload up. So they're working in like teams, a pair will do one project, another pair will do another project, and then they come together and report back to the board. And so I definitely understand your concern. The more people involved, the muddier it can be. But I think in this case, if we, I don't know if we should put any limits or constraints on the numbers of members right away, and kind of see how it goes. Because we can always add stuff, right?
Evan, then Matt.
I would just, it would be my opinion that the board should consider, just writing it as the statute allows with the 5 to 15, because I think it'll accordion over time, right? We have some older veteran members, we have some younger veteran members, people will come, people will go. People will want to be on the committee because they want to be involved in their local veterans activities, but they're not able to perform some of these tasks because they're, maybe some older veterans. So I think just leaving it open-ended, it really is a tool to give people an outlet for some of their activities that they want to perform, but also to, help our veterans district actually execute some of these really cool things that we could be doing for veterans in the community.
So I think I'm in total support of this. I think it's a great idea. It's a way to get additional involvement in town in, veterans' interests and needs and activities. I think the key is going to be to make sure that we support this new group with maybe a couple of key individuals where the town can help them establish the operating procedures and the norms and how to operate. Because as a new group, I would imagine, and probably a new group, maybe with some, some individuals that aren't familiar with how to run meetings and take minutes and make decisions and, sort of that basic, that we've just got to give them the support they need to get established. And I support the idea of having sort of anybody that wants to be involved should be. So just, having, adopting the language from the state as it is, it looks pretty straightforward to me. So that's all I had.
Awesome. Any
So-
other? Go ahead, Evan.
So would you like us to bring back a draft charge for your meeting on the 15th or a later meeting?
I think the 15th would be excellent. So the sooner they can get going,
Okay.
they have stuff to work on, it sounds like.
All right, we will do that. And then, sorry, go ahead, Mr. Ditoma. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
You're fine.
Okay. Sorry.
My question was going to be the 3 gentlemen that met with the select board previously, who had applied to be on the trustees of Soldiers and Sailors. Do we reach out to them and say this is what's transpired since that meeting and now you're available to be appointed, or does that whole process have to start all over again?
Evan?
So unless I'm misreading the statute, they're actually supposed to be elected.
In the,
If you-
sorry.
Yep, so in the 41, In cities, the board shall consist of mayor, 5 members appointed by him, 2 members, hold on one second. In towns, the board shall consist of the chairman of the board of selectmen and 5 members elected by the town in the same member as other town officers, 3 of whom shall be veterans and 2 of whom shall not be veterans of any war. 2 members shall be elected for 1 year, 2 for 2 years, and 1 for 3 years.
So I was most recently appointed, so it looks like I'm out of a job.
So we'll go Matt
I-
and Justin.
I think that's 41-105.
Yes, for
Which is the
memorials. That's what we
memorials,
were, that's what Mr. Datoma was talking about, correct?
No, I think what he was talking about is, we had some people apply for that. And just signaling to them basically that you were interested in the, sort of the duties as they.
I
as
got you.
this-
Okay.
You know, the scope creep. So just let's reach back out to them to say, hey, you know, we have a new, advisory board that is forming, that's gonna do all the same stuff that the previous memorial trustees board was doing. So you might want to be interested in apply to this.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood that entirely.
Justin, is that what you were going to say too? Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think it's a great idea and I'm excited to, get it going for everybody. So thank you both for coming in tonight and informing us. Yes, Justin?
Just one more question on the trustees. So chapter 41, section 105, the Board of Trustees. If they have to be elected, at what point would those elections happen? Would that happen in conjunction with town elections? Or would that, okay,
Yes.
okay,
Yeah, and so, I know that we've had conversations about funding and needing to get things, happening. So what I would recommend is that, Justin, you and I can have an offline conversation in which we engage counsel and say, okay, we're straightening all this out, but in the meantime, what do we do? Because we've got stuff to do. And we'll figure that out.
I concur.
If that sounds reasonable.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Souza and Mr. Chitoma for coming in tonight and look forward to seeing you guys on the 15th.
Thank you for having us. Evan and I will get with you later this week to talk about the charge.
All right, you know where to find me.
I do. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is meeting efficiencies, and Ray asked to talk about this, so I'm just going to hand it right over to Ray.
Okay, thank you very much. I just, and I think I've talked to everybody about this, about some of these items already. So meeting efficiencies are just, I don't know. I'll start off with formalities, everybody calls everybody Mr. or Ms. or whatever it is. And, if we can call each other by our first names, that would be really great. Or whatever name you actually come up with, depending on what's going on at the meeting. So, that gives people a little more comfort in a meeting, that you're actually referring to them in their first name and not Mr. and Mrs. And things like that. And again, you can do whatever you want on this, but the agenda. One of my big pet peeves is that I hate to find something out that somebody in town knows, or somebody comes up to me and says, hey, what about this? And I know nothing about it, but then I find out that, well, somebody else found out about it and somebody else said something. I'm just going to throw this out, the agenda for this meeting. I saw what was on the agenda because I went onto the town's website. I hadn't even gotten the agenda yet. So I look at that and I say, we should be the ones getting the agenda, or at least a draft agenda, to comment or approve, or what. We don't have to approve it or comment or anything, but we should get all this information first before it gets out there onto the website, or it gets out onto, onto anything else. That's kind of drives me crazy. Motions. I know that for years you guys have been doing motions with the clerk reads and somebody writes these motions down, and I don't know where that came from or how it got there. And again, my opinion, But anybody can make a motion at any time during any meeting. You don't have to wait for the chairman to say, I'll entertain a motion. Make a motion. It doesn't have to be, what's written down. You may get that and say, and look at it and say, well, that's what we have to read. No, it's not what you have to read. I don't even know who writes these things down. I mean, complicated motions, I understand that. But regular motions, I mean, geez, anybody can make them. Let's see. That's, workshop. I'll just talk about a workshop. A workshop, and I always said to everybody that I don't want to keep going back to what used to happen. But what used to happen in workshops is we didn't have anybody else there. We wore t-shirts, as I have on, and we were comfortable, and we sat around and we talked about what we needed to get done that was on the workshop agenda. We didn't have people coming in. That's creates another meeting. And I know these people, and we didn't, vote on anything or make a decision or anything like that, and that's fine. And I really appreciated, the two people that came on, or the two groups that came on. But workshops should be just for us to do planning, strategy, policies, and talk about things like that. So I'm going to shut up and you guys can talk.
Matt?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to kind of go down the list there. In terms of like formalities, I feel more comfortable. I think fine for using first names amongst board members, but when we're addressing members of the public or, guests, I just, as a professional courtesy, I always feel more comfortable addressing people by.
Let me just say this. I was only talking about us.
So yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I guess I just wanted to clarify that. For me, as a new-ish board member, we hadn't established anything different. And so I'm always going to default to a more formal posture and sort of attitude in a board meeting, because that's just what I'm comfortable with until we decide on something else. But for me, I'm totally happy at this point because I know everybody pretty well, and just switching over to just using first names, I'm perfectly fine with that. As far as the agenda goes, we have kind of an informal practice where the chair will send out a call a couple of days before establishing sort of the finalizing the agenda, I guess, saying, does anybody have anything that they want to add or amend? And so maybe we could just formalize that. I think that makes a lot of sense. We definitely should all be getting the agendas before they're put up, but at the same time, we have meeting posting requirements. And I think just in terms of efficiency, sometimes it makes sense to just get stuff up there so that we have something posted with an agenda that can be later amended. But for the most part, I've been relatively happy with the way that's gone. As far as the motions go, I feel like the motions that are printed in the packets are just guidelines, and I agree, you can make motions at any time. I just see that as an efficiency so that the clerk can know it makes it easier for them to just have everything in hand so that they don't have to be prior to the meeting crafting motions that will meet up with the agenda items and the decisions that we're making. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be that way every agenda item. It's just, to me, that is an efficiency that we're trusting our staff to put together motions which meet up with the decisions that we're making so that they're just in hand and we don't have to think about them, because it's attend meetings with most of the other boards and committees in town, and there's always this discussion about what does the motion have to be, and for us it's just sort of prepackaged, so if you want to use it, it's there. So I really like that piece. And as far as the workshops go, I think that's been a discussion over the past few years, trying to keep them more informal conversations, more just for the board to do informal work without making decisions, without a lot of public input. So if we can achieve that, I'd be in total support of that. I think it's a great idea. It's just difficult with all the work that we have to do. So we end up sneaking business items into our workshops. And so, yeah, maybe we could just be better about separating business from workshops. It's to just promote better quality workshops. I'd support that totally.
Doreen?
Thanks. So I'm going to go backwards. I'm going to start with the workshop. So I agree with Ray. I think that I look at it in terms of we're missing something, and we're not being as effective and efficient by not allowing ourselves to have proper workshops and kind of molding the business meetings and the workshops together, because it gives an opportunity for us as a board to work as one executive body. And a lot of times, you know, when we have these business meetings and we have people coming in and we're making these decisions and we don't have an opportunity to then the following week think about, you know, strategic planning, we miss that part because we don't do it. And so I actually made a short list, and that was one of the things on my list. And I'm also going to put out there, and this is, I know, a radical idea, but I kind of whispered this to Peter at the town meeting, that perhaps through the summer, weather permitting, we could do outdoor workshops. And maybe it doesn't have to be every 2 weeks, but once a month. And we can meet like at the Lions Club, like we did last summer for our goals meeting. And we're just able to be outside as a board. Obviously, it's a public meeting. The public can show up if they want to. And we sit in a circle and have a discussion. And in terms of, you know, and again, I appreciate planning coming out tonight and the veterans coming out tonight. But if that means we have a longer business meeting because we have a lot of work to do, so be it. I would rather see those things on the business agenda and have informal discussions happen between us at a workshop. So as far as the, I'm not going to repeat everything that you both said, but as far as the formalities, I'm fine with that too within board members. I think that's good. And as far as what was the other thing that Ray brought up? Oh, the agenda items. So I like the motions on the agenda. However, you know, I understand that any of us can say a motion at any time. And I was at the library building committee meeting last night, and I noticed that we do the same thing in that committee, that the clerk reads the motion, somebody seconds it, and that's how it's done. And I think it's a matter of efficiency. Instead of everybody reading out the motion at the same time, it's just become habit for some committees and boards to have the clerk read it. But, you know, certainly I don't ever feel like I couldn't make a motion if I didn't want to. The other thing I put was when we're back in person, other cities and towns have sign-in sheets for the public for meeting attendance tracking, and we could add that to the top of the meeting minutes, just to know who was there for the discussion, or, you know, if they spoke or didn't spoke. So I didn't know if that's something that would help us anyway when going back in meeting minutes to see who was there. I also put on my list, encourage interaction and have fun, which kind of goes along with the workshop. I think that's important for us as a board to do. And then I also put time limits and repetitive comments as one, because sometimes we've gone around and around and everybody feels like they have to say something. It's more like a round robin approach. And to have more efficient meetings, I think it would be totally acceptable that if one board member says something, we don't all have to repeat it. And we've done that in the past as well. So little things, but just my input. So thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I just wonder, just trying to riff on the workshop idea, maybe whether we're in person, outside or inside, we just remove the video component of it. So that it becomes a little bit more like, you know, a board hanging out, just in an informal session, brainstorming, having our conversations. You know, we're obviously still taking meeting minutes or whatnot, but it just takes, you know, removing the video component of it, I think takes a lot of, it just changes the quality of it, where it's a little bit more collegial and a little less formal. So I'll just make that suggestion. That might be a good idea. Because I know I definitely enjoyed that when we went to the Lions Club. You know, we were all hanging out on picnic tables and, you know, just the informal setting of it, being outside, but also not having sort of the cameras on you. For me, it felt a lot different.
So just to respond to that, I don't think I would be in favor of removing the cameras. I attend all these meetings and then I rewatch them, and having the documentation is fantastic. And we've had two goals meetings in the, you know, we recorded one and we didn't record the other one. And I think it was more of a result of COVID than anything that we didn't record the second one. But, you know, like the comments at town meeting that we're meeting in dark, nefarious corners, we're absolutely not. So I'd rather just continue to be documenting as much as we possibly can. I feel like our workshops are going well, as long as we can keep, you know, business off of them, which I think that has been creeping in. But tonight's a going really well workshop, and we sometimes need guests to come in and discuss things with us so that when we get to our business meetings, it goes swimmingly. We don't bog down because we got it taken care of when we were talking about it at our workshop. So I'm not sure if the workshop meetings that I'm hearing described now sound like a monthly goals meeting, which we kind of take care of when we have our goals meetings. I don't know if we need a monthly just sit around in our t-shirts and vibe, you know, like I feel like we have a lot of work to do and we've accelerated and we're working at this pace, and I would hate to slow down. I agree with using the first names. I think that's fine. The motions, that was covered. And then the sign-in sheets, that is a thing. I'm not sure where it went away, but when I started attending things in person everywhere, some of the committees had sign-in sheets and I would sign them, and not all of them did. So it was very sporadic, which ones did, which ones didn't. And then they kind of just disappeared. So I'm not sure what that is, but it was here. But maybe we should be more diligent about that. That's for sure. Right?
Yeah, Colleen, I'm never gonna wear a t-shirt again.
You can wear t-shirts. It's totally fine. There's no flip-flops.
No, I'm never gonna wear it again. That's it. Matt, I love your idea, taking it out of the video. I think that if we can, the more comfortable that we can get in a meeting and in a workshop, the more work we're gonna get done. And I totally agree with you, Matt, that taking it off of the video for, you know, one meeting or a couple meetings or something like that, just to sit around and get things done. We have an agenda, we have, you know, we have minutes taken. And Colleen, on your end, I understand that the, you know, the dark side of this that came up at town meeting, which was so, you know, I know Scott very well, why he brought that up and why people think that there's some dark side somewhere. The only thing that's dark, well, it wasn't here until I turned the lights on, but you know, that's about it. So yeah, Matt, I agree with that, and I think it's a great idea.
During the Matt.
I'm in favor of the no video workshops too. And I think, you know, I hear what you're saying, Colleen, too. And I do. I think the access to recorded meetings is really important, but I think the structure and the purpose of workshops are very, very different than board meetings. And we have never experienced that as a board. It was done for decades and then something switched, probably video. and it changes it entirely. So I think there's meetings and there's workshops, and that in order to get comfortable with each other, and again, like, we can still read the meeting minutes. So someone who likes to geek out on watching GCTV government videos all the time, I can relate to what you're saying, but I also think that it's the only way we're going to get there. It's the only way we're going to have like a really successful workshop, in my opinion.
Matt?
Yeah, I just think, well, I don't think, the purpose of the workshop is very different than a business meeting. And previous boards have gotten away from that. And I do think we need to get back to that. And I think a key is to remove the video component of that. I know that's going to drive you a little crazy, Colleen, but it's about having an effective meeting, and you've got to determine what the purpose of the meeting is. And the purpose of the meeting that's a workshop is very, very different than a business meeting. And I think so I would encourage us to just try it and see how it works out. We could consider some type of transcription, or like more closely verbatim minutes, to try to facilitate the sort of information gathering and intelligence gathering that you're always after, Colleen. I get it. I get your need to, you're sort of, I don't know, craving for as much context as possible. But at the same time, I just know how I feel on camera and off camera. And it's to promote that effective workshop. I really strongly feel that it's a good component of it. So I guess I'm just gonna stick with my guns on that one. I think it's really important, and I think we should try it out. And if it doesn't work and it actually either backfires, where people get too casual or too loose, or we don't feel comfortable or whatever, then we can always change it back. But I think we should explore the possibility and see how we can really run with the workshop theme, and try to make it as effective a workshop as opposed to a business meeting. So, and that might mean that we take some of this business and move it into business meetings, and make those longer. But as I think we've all found out over the last year, nobody on this board is bothered by longish meetings. It's okay. We'll do the work we need to do.
Right?
Oh, no, I was just putting my hand up saying I am.
No. Informal, short meetings, raise out. Okay.
I know,
got it.
here we are talking about meeting efficiencies.
No, it's like going to a long mass, you go there because you have to go there and you want to go there, but you don't want it to last forever.
So speaking of efficiencies, I actually had one other idea, and I would like to try to incorporate consent motions to our business meetings, where we do a consent motion for resignation, appointments, and meeting minutes. And it might not shave off tons of time, but a couple of minutes anyway, instead of going through the process of each one. We can hold if we need to, but just kind of sweep those all together into one motion.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Okay, awesome. All right. So does everybody feel comfortable with this so far? Do we want to talk about it anymore? Okay, perfect. So now we're going to move on to the town administrator's 6-month evaluation and his annual evaluation. So we owe Evan a 6-month evaluation, and we need to kind of decide what that's. No.
No, so you will owe me a 6-month evaluation in 3 months.
Well, in August, yeah.
Right, okay, sorry, sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
It's probably gonna go on my evaluation now, isn't it?
Yes, interrupt
Frequently interrupts.
Not in a good way.
Yeah, right.
No, what I was getting at is, so we need to craft what that is going to look like. So did everybody receive a copy of what Evan sent out in his first 90 days, what he's accomplished so far? Awesome. So where do you guys want to start with that? How do you want this evaluation to look? Is it going to be super formal, informal, super in-depth? What do you guys envision? Ray?
I mean, I'd like to see, a 6-month evaluation. I'd like to see it informal. I think some of the things Evan has down here highlighted are really good. But there's a lot more going on, and he's still just learning. So, you know, in this town, it's not easy to learn, but, you know, I think an informal 6 month, it's not gonna, you don't want something to relate to the yearly evaluation. So you just kind of want an update of what's going on and how things are going, and you know, how we feel these items are going along, and how things are going along. So that's my opinion.
Matt?
Yeah, I'd agree with the informal approach. And Evan, thanks for putting this together. I think it's a pretty good encapsulation. One of the things that I'd like to see in the next 90 days, in addition to what you've put down, is we need continued discussions with the fire department around that transition. So I know, you know, at this point we have a strong chief, but we're still in this interim period, and I think it's really important to continue that line of engagement to make sure that things are still on track. And, you know, it's such a key, it's one of the biggest things that's happening in Grafton this year. So we just need to make sure that that continues to be on track. So I would love to just see some language around continued engagement with the chief and with the department to just, you know, make sure we're still on the rails. And that's all going okay. Aside from that, yeah, I think it's going to necessarily be informal because you inherited a bunch of stuff. You're doing a bunch of housekeeping that just needs to be done anytime you get a new administration in place and you have a bunch of churn. And there's going to be a lot of settling of staff and whatnot. So I'm not looking to necessarily, you know, hold your feet too closely to the fire, I guess, with any particular thing, because a lot of it at this point is just reactive. So, you know, I guess that's about all I had to say. When we do get to the 6 month, though, I would hope that we would have much clearer goals and objectives for the following year. And so I think that's, for me, that's sort of the focus for this board, is to make sure that we're giving clear direction around, you know, the following year, to make sure that both the town administrator and staff have a very clear idea of what the priorities are, so that then in a year we can have that much more formal review against a pretty clearly articulated set of objectives.
Doreen?
Yeah, I'm okay with the informal 6 month as well. I would like to see us categorize though, so we're not missing anything, you know, certainly a space for if something was missed that we can add in, because there is a lot going on. But you know, the fire chief search committee was brought up, and Evan, you know, being on the committee with him, I know that he's very much involved and engaged in this. And as we go through this process, you know, I want to make sure we're highlighting key components that's going on in the town, not just things that he walked into, but new things going on, and that we have certain categories so we're able to identify strengths and weaknesses properly and be able to, you know, take off into the next 6 months with some clarification. You know, and everything from, you know, approachability and his integrity, and working with staff, communication with the board. Those are all examples. They're not necessarily work, but they're, you know, related to whether it's personality or style or specific things going on in the town that are action items that we need done. So we can put that in an informal order, but I would like to see a little bit of structure around it.
Right?
Yeah, Evan, I just want to go back to what something Matt said. We adopted the strong chief provision, but we do not have a strong chief in place at this time, correct?
That's my understanding of it as
Yeah, I
well.
want to make that clear, because we will not have a strong chief until we appoint a full-time chief. The current chief reports to Evan. Okay, that's all.
So as someone who's never reviewed a town administrator before, this informal review would we be given a sheet of paper or an outline to say, fill this out, or just we write up how our feelings on a piece of paper and then we collaborate them all together? How does the process work? And I think, Doreen, you're probably the only one on the, in Ray previously, or Evan. Let's go to the Evan.
So I have been through the review process several times. One of the things that I find helpful, and I think, the informal process is great for the 6 month. Having done this, I've only been a Grafton 3 months, but I have 7 years under my belt of being a town administrator. And one of the things I find helpful is, like Doreen said, if there is some kind of guidance that is provided of general direction I should be heading in. I realize that I've stepped into a whole bunch of, kind of half-minute things, and there's a lot of fires to put out, and we've been really busy with that. But I also don't want to lose sight of those overarching goals that, we're going to try to achieve for you as a board. And so even if you put together, I can certainly, I probably have 40 different town administrator reviews from different towns. So if you'd like me to send out something that's, a really short and sweet 1-pager that just helps, I know it's informal, but it solidifies a little bit of the thought to give some direction. I can certainly do that. Not that I'm suggesting I should write my own evaluation, but I do have the forms that I could put something that I think the board might be a good jump off point for you folks.
I think that would be super helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
And then as far as the more formal annual evaluation, we have that on here as well to discuss. And I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts or feelings about that. Doreen?
So I'm pretty sure, and Evan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure MMA has structured guidelines around that for annual reports. So I could grab that and email it to the group, and we can also maybe take a look at that in a future meeting and make it into Grafton's, but at least it'll be a, some sort of outline that we can go out with.
I agree. Do we have a formal policy on how we should be reviewing the town administrator at all? And is that something we should consider crafting, because it won't only be for the town administrator at this point, it's going to be going to our fire chief in the future as well. So a formal policy on how we want to handle these annual reviews would be something we should probably put into place. Evan?
So you have an annual review policy and documents that we use for review of general staff. I don't think that they should be the same process or same document for people that are in, kind of the upper echelon leadership roles. Police chief, well, I do police chief, that's different here. But fire chief and myself, I think we would create a standalone document that you would do for that, and then just put what I found to be most helpful is, a lot of the document is a numerical grading, and then there's some free-form stuff at the end, so that you can then, give that to a single person who can collate the numbers together and come out with an aggregate scoring. That seemed to work best when we have, different people going in different directions. The one thing that we did that I did not care for is they had a section for staff evaluation. And I think staff feedback is important, but specific comments from staff, I always know who it is. So it takes that anonymous part out of it, and it puts the staff in a really awkward position. So that would be my only thing that I realize it's my evaluation. That's the only thing I would request of the board, is that we don't do that, or if we solicit staff feedback, we do it in a more generalized way. Because otherwise I know that it made the staff very uncomfortable.
Matt?
So I think it's really important that we get input from staff. I don't know if it has to be during the evaluation process. But I am very interested in making sure that we have some input from staff in terms of, how such a key role is the is performing and how the interactions are going, because that's such a key, the managerial part of this job is
Right.
arguably one of the biggest parts of the job, as an administrator. So I totally open to that discussion. I completely get where you're going with, and I don't want to be putting anybody in a situation where they're having to rate their boss, where then those ratings go to their boss and become
Right.
exposed. So I'm completely sensitive to that. But I'm also, I would hate for it to just be the opinions of 5 board members, because the stakeholder community for the town administrator and it's, that the performance of that role is, it goes pretty wide. So it's such a key position. So I don't know, however we do it, I would like to see some additional input.
Oh, and I agree. Sorry, Colleen. I agree 100%. I think that's a huge component, building staff morale, building your culture and your team and all of that. And I think that plays heavily into how you evaluate a town administrator. What had happened in one of my previous reviews is that there were like direct quotes from staff of how they felt about me. And I think that it's perfectly reasonable for some staff to not agree 100% with what I'm doing all the time, but it's not that big of a town. And so I invariably will know who that one staff person is. And I don't think that's fair to them. So I think if you add a staff component solicitation to the review, I think that's fantastic. I think it just needs to be reported into the document in kind of a more amalgamous way, so that it's just, in general, this is how staff feel. However, we may be able to work on this area over here, maybe in just a way that, because as a person that's trying to build that culture and staff morale and make the staff comfortable, I see that it has an opposite effect. And I just want to make sure we're cognizant of that as we shape it. That's all.
Ray and Matt.
Evan, do you, I know you have department head meetings every week. Do you do one-on-ones with all the department heads?
I do. It's having, so I did that my first month. I figured I would do it kind of quarterly, one-on-one check-ins, because, I also don't want to bog people down with yet another.
Yeah, because you'll get good feedback. Once people are comfortable sitting down with you and talking with you, you'll get good feedback on that.
I agree. And this will come out in the review, obviously, but I feel like I already have that. I mean, I think I've had plenty of back and forth. Not everybody agrees with me. We talk it out. We figure stuff out. I think we're building that culture, but I think you're right. That quarterly contact, and then I have bi-weekly staff meetings with all department heads.
So I think it's important for us to make sure that we represent the sort of minority opinion, kind of as I don't know, comprehensively as possible. So it's probably going to, for me, need some additional discussion, just thinking about how we work that out. But what I don't want is just at the end of the day, some comments in a rating without a slightly deeper look at the different perspectives that people have. Because I think you can see a direction of travel over years, where if you see something that's concerning, that becomes more concerning. If it just gets quashed year after year after year, then you don't have the kind of the detail and the documentation that you need to manage the situation as a new board member. If you're just looking at previous evaluations and they're not bringing up anything negative because it's exceeds performance or whatever, but all of those minor things never get brought up, you're just not going to have a clue. The public wouldn't have a clue, and the town administrator also wouldn't have a direction to go in terms of the improvements that need to be made. So I'm not sure exactly how we do that, but I'm very keen to make sure that we have not just a rating and some basic comments, but we actually have I guess a fair representation of the variety of perspectives that we get with whatever feedback mechanisms we have.
Maureen?
Are we going to add this into the 6-month review as well? Meaning reaching out to staff, or are we just talking about the annual?
I think we're talking about the annual. The 6 month was going to be a more informal one. I think that's just going to stick to the board. And then this is more for the annual.
Okay. And then follow up too, Matt, you know, I know you have a lot of experience managing people in the private sector, and it seems like, you know, this is a strength of yours to try to figure out a structure that would work. So, I mean, I would also be open to if there's any sort of documentation or work that you've done in the past that has worked, that hasn't made its way into local government, that we can add into, make sure that we're capturing what staff is saying, and particular, either whether it be a strength or a weakness, again, of the town administrator, that we're able to document that without calling out a person or Evan knowing who it is. And at first I was thinking, you know, a number guideline, but that doesn't capture as well what the particular issue is unless we're asking the right question. So I'm in favor of that. And I just, you know, not to put extra work on you, but I'd be very interested if, you know, you have something from your history or the work you're doing with hiring people, or evaluating your staff, like what that looks like.
Sure. Yeah, I'll definitely bring some more coherent thoughts around that in terms of process, I guess, because that's really what we need to get to between now and when we do that 6-month eval.
And I'm happy to look. I have, I can also, I know Evan says he has like 40 documentations from different communities, and I certainly do not have 40, but I do I do have a couple, and I can ask around too and see if there's anything that work. And it sounds like we should have a meeting sooner than later to kind of pull all this information together and be, and all of us feel comfortable with the structure of the annual.
Makes sense. And, you know, maybe one way we could do it is to have the input just go to the select board, but not necessarily go into the sort of formal evaluation document. And then, but then all of the select board members' feedback in their document, those would all be included. So you'd input everything into the board, and then the board would have their sort of 5 opinions, but all 5 of those opinions would be issued with the evaluation document. Might be one way to do it. So that way you could totally anonymize it, and you wouldn't have any sort of direct quotes or anything that would be attributable back to individuals. So, but I'm happy to put a little bit more thought into that, but you know, we definitely need to start with the MMA guidance first, I think.
And while we're collecting all this information, should we be reaching out to communities that have strong chiefs and be collecting their reviews as well? Because it's not just the town administrator we're going to be reviewing in the future. We really need to have a handle on that rather than be reactive. Just have it all in place so ready to go.
I can get that from Sutton tomorrow, most likely. So I can reach out tomorrow morning and get a copy of both, what they use for the town manager over there and what they use for the strong chief.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. So are we good with this topic? Awesome. All right. Now we're going to move on to select board priorities and goals. And this fall we met and made a list of goals and priorities. So we just want to take a look at them, acknowledge what we've accomplished, and you know, talk about what we're still working on and possibly add or remove anything because we do have, you know, a new board member now, and just have a conversation about that. Do you guys want me to pull it up, or are you guys comfortable pull it up? Challenging. Okay, hold on.
Hey, you wanted to be chairman.
Is that working? Can you guys see that? Oops. All right, I'm gonna make you guys smaller. Get you out of the way. Make this bigger for everybody. Is that good? Where is everybody? Well, I can't hear you now, so
It might be a little bit small for people.
Okay,
Colleen, do you want me to share my whole screen?
yeah, I'm not doing that.
Well, yours is, it's, man, I'm just not setting myself up good for a good evaluation. Your screen was a little
Evan,
bit,
Evan, you should just keep quiet.
I know, I'm really just shooting myself in the foot here. This is it in the Excel form. Is that bigger?
Any way to make it a little bigger?
You can
Sure.
hit the plus button there, yeah.
Yep, I got it. Who am I, Colleen?
You wish.
Who just went from a 5 to a 4?
I know. Okay.
So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this document. The first document we came up with when we had Carter with us, that bothered me to no end. I didn't like looking at it. It just was atrocious to me. So I crafted this one because it was easier for me to look at. And then it also helps to highlight things that we've accomplished. So I guess we could just go from there and see what everybody thinks. Should we just go down the list? I mean, clearly we hired a town administrator, hiring a grant procurement officer. Where are we kind of with that, you think? You think FY23 is still reasonable, or Evan?
Oh, I do, if that's what the board wants. I'm not personally sold that you need that, but
Oh.
that's maybe a longer conversation. It seems like an expense that we could maybe put money somewhere else and still achieve what you want to achieve. But that, again, that's a longer term conversation. If it is the board's goal to do that, then yes, by fiscal 23, I would think we would be able to figure out how to budget for that and make that happen.
All right, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would agree with Evan. I'm not sure that that's a position right now that, I think there are other positions that we're gonna need to fill in the next 2 years. And that's probably close to the bottom of the list, in my opinion.
Dorian, then Matt?
Yeah, we put this on when we had a temporary town administrator and we hadn't hired William. And there was definitely a gap in the board's opinion of whether or not people were, there was any staff that was concentrating directly on grants. I don't even know if it was around economic development or what the conversation is. I'd have to go back and look at those meeting minutes. And Evan, are you a procurement officer?
I am not. I will be within probably a year. I put William through the training first.
Okay.
Um,
I've been
so-
through the training. It's loads of fun. So,
So sorry, I did half of it in Munson, and then it wasn't really a priority because we had Mary Loria, who is the procurement officer there. So
Yeah.
I focused on other things, but I am going to complete the training here. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's good. So, half of this is going to be taken care of within a year. It's sort of my point. So this is probably something that we may want to highlight. And when we have our next goals meeting, the end of the summer, whenever we decide, we take a deeper dive with that and see if we want to take it off the list completely or what we think. Because a lot has changed staff-wise. So goals will probably shift now.
I mean, is there any reason why we can't be updating the list right now?
No, there isn't. I was just thinking in terms of this is our goals list and we don't have all board members here tonight. So, if we wanted to, when we set a new set of goals, there's going to be things that fall into our annual goals coming up. If we do another goals meeting in between August and October, like we did last year. And so this would be something that we have. And if we wanted to drop off, I guess we could do that now, but it may be more appropriate to do it at a future goals meeting.
Okay.
And that's just my opinion. I mean, if all of us agree to get rid of it and Peter's not at the meeting, we can just do it now.
So when Peter and I were prepping for this, that was, I think, he thought we'd be reviewing this list and, you know, adding or removing anything as we saw fit. I don't think we should totally like gut the thing, but I mean, if we're all in agreement that this is just no longer a priority, I think just cleaning the list up and making it easier for us to digest at our next meeting would be good, right? Or maybe I'm alone on this idea too.
I'd keep it on, but I'd push it out a year.
Okay.
Because eventually, I mean, these positions pay for themselves when you get a really good person that can navigate through grants and stuff like that. But I'd push it out a year.
Okay.
And I just want to add to Colleen that there was a purpose for us wanting to see more grant applications go out through the town of Grafton. And so, you know, we should probably have a discussion of how we evaluate that, whether it's through Evan or, you know, a process through the board, and just make sure. I think the issue of the thought of hiring a grant manager was because we weren't thinking we were taking advantage of opportunities of grants. And so I think that's a discussion that's worth having in the future.
Perfect. All right. Then the next one is, wait, Matt, you had one more thing, sorry.
You know, so I'm not as worried about the procurement officer piece of it as I am the grants. And I'm aware of at least one grant that we had access to this year that was not applied for. And so but that doesn't mean that we have to hire somebody to do it. The problem typically is that people they're not prioritizing applying for grants. So I think that's something that Evan can manage. And I think it's something that he should be managing. We should be getting every outside dollar that we can get. Part of it, I think, is going to take care of itself when we get a more complete fire department, because I know that's something that's been a bit of a concern that at least I've had, is that we're not fully staffed and we don't qualify for some and we're not applying for others. You know, that I think that some of that will take care of itself as we mature the fire department. But I would certainly like to see grant writing and applications prioritized in the coming years. So for me, I'd be happy to just take it off because I don't see the need for it if we're managing grants.
All right. So I think we're all over the place, so we'll just leave it to be safe. How about select board formal operating procedures? Lead party, Evan.
What was the intent here? To create them or to like review the ones that you had sent me, Colleen? And start a formal process of how we review procedures? Is that what the intent is?
I think that's what it is. We don't have one central location for all of our, you know, operating procedures and policies. They're kind of all over the place. Some aren't signed. We're unsure if they ever were taken into action and voted upon. So I think it's just get something together and then, you know, maybe get to the point of where school committee is, where we start reviewing those policies annually and making sure that they're current and where they need to be. Does everybody agree with that? Am I way off base? Matt?
Yeah, you know, we've got 4 PDF documents now, which is all but useless, which never got sent out to anybody, which I don't think anybody ever read. They were never reviewed. As you know, I'm sure some of them were followed by the people that wrote them. But you know, when I was reading through those documents, I didn't see anything newer than 2007. And we have things like social media policies and financial policies that they need to be rewritten. So my thinking was that we would just implement a program of having staff look at the policies, help us prioritize which ones could be dealt with, and just start in on, I don't know, once a quarter looking at a policy with some sense of priority. For me, the financial policies, because those are, impacting our bond rating, are going, those, I wish they were done already. So I see those on the list. I think we've got to move those up a little bit. Our financial management policies are on FY22, so I guess that's okay. I'd like, if we did nothing else this year in terms of policy, I'd love to do that one.
Evan?
Those update financial management policies is in my next 90 days. I'm trying to have a draft of that to you folks in that timeframe. I won't say that we'll attain that in 90 days because there's other stakeholders that, have to weigh in and all of that. And I think that's beyond, kind of our control, but Mary, Lori and I are very keen on updating your financial management policies. And not to jump ahead, Madam Chair, but same thing with OPEB risk and budgeting for forecast for sustainability, doing that 5-year look ahead. That's all what we're currently addressing at the request of the board.
Perfect. So then that brings us to material improvement in customer service culture, which I think when that made it to the list, we were pretty deep into COVID. And I think there was a lot of COVID burnout happening here. But, what does everybody think? Do we think this is still an issue, or have we seen improvement where we're less concerned? Or Evan and then Matt?
No, Matt can go first.
So for me, I had, when we discussed our goals, just kind of came off the campaign. What I heard from a lot of constituents was that their experience when they went to the municipal center wasn't, from a customer service standpoint, wasn't what they expected from their local government. So they didn't feel like the town was acting as the partner that it should be to try to help them solve problems. That's sort of, for me, that's what this was about. Carter correctly brought up that that's difficult to measure. So as a goal, that's really challenging. And clearly the culture in the municipal center is changing. With the onboarding of Evan, I don't know how we measure that one, but I want to make sure that when people rock up to the municipal center, that they feel taken care of. They're not always going to hear the answer that they want to hear, because often people are asking to do things that can't be done, or whatever. But to the extent possible, we need to make sure that they're feeling like they're being taken care of, to the extent we can. So I don't know how we measure that one. So that's a difficult one for me. But it's important. So, because I did hear about it a lot.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important, and that the board should leave it there. Again, hard to measure, because quite frankly, you'll hear 10 to 1 the negative as opposed to the positive, right? People have a good experience, you just never hear about it. But I think we have a ways to go in creating a customer service culture. I think there are some deficiencies that we've already identified. And those things are not, they don't happen overnight. That shift doesn't happen, tomorrow, just because, I got there, or Mary got there, or William got there, or whoever, pick anybody. We're going to build that culture, and I think you should leave it there. I just, like Matt said, I don't know how you measure it besides, stop getting complaints.
Yep. Well, and it's not just personal interactions too. It's the technology in some cases.
Yep.
Right. So people complain about the website, and I know that's something that we are looking at, and we need to continue to look at. So people need to be able to find forms easily. Just people talk about things like, hey, I just wanted to get a permit for a deck, and it was impossible.
Yep.
To try to figure out how I did something. This should be a routine thing that I should be able to look up on the town website and work through the process really quickly. So that whole permitting process, I think, working with developers, so some of it is technology too. not just necessarily personal interactions. So it is kind of a multifaceted thing. I'd like to just continue the discussion on it because I think it is really important. It's the, you know, people's basic impression of the government is when they need to go build a deck. Otherwise, they don't really care. They're paying their taxes and, you know, if you don't have kids in the school, you know, you're probably not noticing much of what's going on until you go to build that deck. So it's those interactions that really make a difference.
Doreen?
Yeah, just one addition to that. I think this happened years ago and I in Grafton, and I know it's happened in other communities. I'm a big fan of surveys, and I didn't know if, you know, that would be a way to approach, you know, customer service or communication within town hall. And if there's a short survey that, you know, we could put out to the public, and I don't mean the public at large. I think this happened about 10 or 15 years ago, but there were volunteers who stood outside the municipal center and just on a random day and like once a month, and people would walk in, and when they came out, they'd have a short survey of, you know, how was your experience? Did you get this handled? Did you have any issues? Who did you speak to? And just collect information, because without any data to analyze, we're really kind of going with what we all hear, which is generally the complaints and not the good things going on too. So this would give an opportunity for someone who said, yeah, I had a great experience. I went and spoke to Evan and he solved my problem immediately. And it was a really good interaction. And we want to hear about that too. So I don't know if that would be, you know, just kind of a way to make that goal a little more attainable.
I love that idea. I think that's a far better way to survey people. So you're not, if you were to put it online, you're not hearing complaints from 10 years ago because people just couldn't get over it. It's a real snapshot of what happened. So that's a great idea. Taxation Aid Committee. So correct me if I'm wrong. I just feel like we got it right to the 1 yard line with this and then just didn't follow through with it. We got the charge, we got it all done, and then the last thing we needed to do was just check in with our you know, the people that would be most actively involved with it. Principal, I forget the term, but
Principal assessor.
yeah, and but we didn't do it, and I think that's why it says annual town meetings. We were going to have to vote on it, and then but we never even got it prepared for that. So is this something we still want to do, or are we less interested in it? Evan?
I think, yes, it's absolutely something you want to do. Mary Loria and Mary Oliver just brought this back to my attention last week, saying that now that we've got some stability, this is something that they wanted to circle back on and bring this back. So I think it's just a matter of, I think you went through a little bit of turmoil and it kind of fell off the radar just a touch. But you do have staff that are very keen to make sure that this happens.
Okay, perfect. I don't know if it's going to be as easy to get updates on the rest because the lead parties aren't as accessible as Evan right now, but I mean, is there anything standing out on the remaining goals to anybody that you guys want to discuss, or is it all kind of still stand? Look, it even says 27 Upton Street. Let's change that right now.
Colleen, can I add something to the goals?
Sure.
This is something that I'm used to having is a shared drive, and I've been told that we do not have a shared drive that can be accessed by the board or the town administrator. You know, to look at contracts, to look at documents, to look at things like that. What the process is that we need to talk to Cindy or Joanne, and they will dig up the contract or whatever it is that we're looking for, and then send it to us. That takes a lot of time away from their work, and if we had a shared drive, and again, I don't know how easy this is. I'm not an IT guy or anything like that. But if we had a shared drive that the board and the town administrator and certain other people could access, for document retrieval. I think that would be great. I'm a big contract guy. You know, I look at contracts, I read contracts all the time, and it would just be nice if we had a shared drive that we could go to and get this information.
So I believe we do. I'm Google Drive deficient, but we have one, and Peter's walked me through it a couple times, including this afternoon. And it has just, I don't know if it'll have every thing you're requesting, but we have one that will at least be easier to upload the additional information you might be looking for.
Well, if I may.
Yes.
So that might not be a goal for on here because I think it's short-term solvable.
Yeah.
So why don't we have, why don't I have a conversation? I have a meeting with our IT consultant tomorrow. So let me talk about how that may play out besides just a Google Drive, whether
Yeah.
that's, a VPN into the BOS drive that you all have access to or something.
It would be limited access, obviously.
Well, we don't, if we give Colleen too much access, then I'm never gonna get anything done because that's
Well,
all.
no,
we're gonna
no,
talk
when I said limited, I didn't mean Colleen.
I don't
Okay.
even know what you just said, so that's fine. VPNA, BCD, so I'm fine.
I think that's short-term solvable. I don't know that you need it on here, but I will take that feedback, Ray, and make that
Great.
achievable.
Awesome. Well, I think that just, I mean, does anything else, Ray, you want to add, or Matt?
Yeah, I guess, and I know Evan is doing this already with Jay, but just considering shared services, I think is a really important one. So obviously, we had, I don't know, we have different relationships forming between the municipal and school side of our town. I think there's some opportunity now to gain some efficiencies if we can look at some additional opportunities to share services, things like finance and HR and various back office capabilities to be able to potentially create some room for some additional positions in other areas. So I would like to see that potentially. IT is another one that we definitely should be. I think overall we should be looking at our technology investment in Grafton. It's in line maybe with what other towns are, but I get scared when I see ransomware attacks happening at large corporations and whatnot, and looking even at local municipalities. I just don't know that we're well positioned from a technology security standpoint. So all of those things I think would benefit from some shared services across the departments. So
Dory?
Yeah, I just want to highlight the master plan. I think it's important to me that we have a conversation around a reasonable timeline of developing a new master plan. I think ours is 25 years old, and I know it costs money. I know it costs time, but
We just approved that process in the capital plan.
yes. So, but we don't have a timeline for it, right?
So I think it's going to get paid over 3 years. So the first phase of the master plan just got approved in the capital plan at town meeting. So I think that's how that's going to go, right, Evan?
But is it going to happen in FY22?
The first phase.
It is, okay.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I didn't know that. Okay, so that's great. So that we can update. I don't know if we have, yeah. So we have it, so we can put green for FY22 for that one.
Oh, man. All right, I'll fix it later. I know what it's supposed to say. I don't want to show off my computer deficit on television.
September, like what's January 3rd?
This- Yeah,
I'm like, all right, that wasn't what I was saying, but.
yeah. Oh my God.
All right. So that's a good one. That was good to bring up to say that, that's another partially checked one. All
And then-
right.
And then I know too, the green communities, I know that was applied for this year too. I'm not sure the climate change resiliency, if there's any action grants going on with that, but I am aware that the town applied for $250,000 worth of green communities, and we won't hear until probably July or August, whether that's received or not, but I had put that in because obviously it's in my wheelhouse, but also I didn't want Grafton to not take advantage of the opportunity of a $250,000 grant with additional cost savings. So
We did green communities and we did an MVP grant.
awesome.
Top of mind, I don't have the status in front of me timeline wise, but they're in play.
All right. So does anyone have anything else they want to talk about this, or do we feel pretty recapped and comfortable with where we are on our goals and priorities? All right. Well, I think we're pretty comfortable and recapped on our goals and priorities. So we didn't have anything else on our agenda. So we can just take a motion to adjourn at this point.
I will make a motion. Doreen?
I have one quick comment before we adjourn. I just wanted to thank Evan and staff for town meeting running so smoothly, for being here for 3 months. And I didn't know at first. I walked into town meeting and like everything was there prepped. I had a folder in front of me. I sat in the wrong seat. I sat in Ray's seat and moved over, still had a folder for me. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to staff too, and just say, Mary and William and Joanne and Cindy and Candy and Paul and everybody who helped coordinate and put that together. And Ray, you too, getting everything set up for Dawn to be successful at running her first meeting. I was really pleased at how smoothly it went. For being again doing it outside in the heat, and I know people who probably sat in the audience had a different perspective of it, but I think the staff did a great job, and I just wanted to say thank you to everybody.
And Dawn did a fantastic job, and she'll be a moderator she'll beat my record. So
Thank God we got rid of that other guy.
he's awesome.
Seriously.
Wasn't he?
Yeah, no, she knocked it out of the park.
You know what? People who act like that become selectmen.
I know.
Perfect.
I just want to, since you're on that vein, I just want to thank also Paul, Patrick, and Todd from our custodial staff, our maintenance guys. They really, it's in the background, but they did the heavy lifting, quite honestly, literally and figuratively. And a lot of the, having a good meeting, a lot of it is owed to them.
Thank you to everybody.
Okay.
All right, make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. We'll go by roll call. Matt?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Doreen?
Aye.
Colleen? Aye. Motion adjourned.